boys and girls. With Groundhog's Day just around the corner, I thought it would be fun to read this book called Groundhog's Day at the Doctor. My mom and dad used to read this book to me when I was little, and I loved it, so I thought it would be fun to share with you. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new read-alouds. Let's get started. Groundhog's Day at the Doctor by Judy Delton and Julio Maestro. Groundhog woke up and stretched. "It must be February 2nd, he said. "Groundhog's Day. I can't stay in bed any longer." Groundhog climbed out of bed and got dressed. "My, I'm stiff," he said, yawning. "I don't think I've had enough sleep." After Groundhog drank some tea, he sat in his chair and dozed off. When he woke up, he still felt stiff. And when he looked in the mirror, he said, "Dear me, I am pale. Perhaps I have the flu. I'd better go and see the doctor." So Groundhog put on his wool coat, his hat, his muffler, and his warm boots. He started down the path. Soon he arrived at the doctor's office. Rabbit was sitting in a chair waiting for the doctor. "Why, good morning, Groundhog," whispered Rabbit. "Hello, Rabbit," answered Groundhog. "What's the matter with your voice, Rabbit?" asked Groundhog. "I have a very sore throat. I can hardly talk," answered Rabbit. "It all started with a head cold." "Rabbit, Rabbit," said Groundhog, "were you out in the snow without your boots?" Rabbit thought for a minute. Then he nodded. "I believe I was, come to think of it. Sunday night when I came home from Weasel's house, it was snowing." "Well, no wonder you're sick," said Groundhog. "Have you tried a hot mustard foot bath?" Rabbit shook his head. "Well, why don't you try that?" said Groundhog kindly. "It brought Squirrel's voice back." "Why, thank you, Groundhog, I will," said Rabbit. "The doctor isn't in yet, and it may be a long wait. I think I'll do just as you say." A few minutes later, after Rabbit left, Goose hobbled in leaning on a cane. "Dear me, Goose," said Groundhog, "whatever happened to you?" "Oh, I sprained my ankle," she said. "Oh, it looks bad," said Groundhog, shaking his head. "It's very swollen." "My cousin had a sprained ankle. Worse than yours, Goose, much worse. He put cold packs on it, and it was much better by the evening. The next morning he could walk. The mud is frozen now. Why don't you try snow?" "It may be a long wait for the doctor, and my ankle is aching. I think I'll do just as you say. Thank you, Groundhog." As Goose was leaving, Chipmunk came in the door. He had red spots all over his face, paws, and tail. He sat down on the stool that Goose had just left. Groundhog cleared his throat. What are those, spots, Chipmunk?" he said. "Oh, it's not the spots I care about," chattered Chipmunk. "It's my stomach. Oh, how it hurts." Groundhog held up a paw. "Just a minute, Chipmunk. Do you have a fever?" Chipmunk felt his forehead. "No," he said. "A headache?" asked Groundhog. Chipmunk shook his head. "Where were you last night?" Groundhog asked finally. "Last night?" Chipmunk said. "Well, I went berry picking in the woods." "Aha! Those spots are berry juice," said Groundhog. "And did you eat too many berries, Chipmunk?" "Well, yes, I guess so," said Chipmunk. "That happened to my grandfather once," said Groundhog, nodding his head. "And do you know what he took?" "What?" said Chipmunk anxiously. "Baking soda in water," said Groundhog. "He was better in no time, Chipmunk." "Really?" said Chipmunk. "Oh, thank you, Groundhog. I think I'll do just as you say. It may be a long wait for the doctor, and I do want to get rid of this stomach ache." So Chipmunk waved goodbye, and he left. Groundhog sat down again. He picked up a magazine and began to read. Just then the doctor came in. He looked around the room. "Groundhog, you seem to be my only patient this morning. What can I do for you?" "Dear me," said Groundhog. "Well, I forget what the matter was." "Oh, yes, I remember. I felt tired and stiff. and I look pale." "Well, I'm surprised you're even out of bed," said the doctor. "Well, I always get out of bed on Groundhog's Day," answered Groundhog. The doctor looked at his calendar. "Groundhog's Day is tomorrow," he said. "You're up early." "You know, my mother used to feel stiff and tired when she needed fresh air and exercise. That's what you need too, Groundhog." "Well, that makes sense," said Groundhog. The doctor looked around and said, "Well, since I have no other patients, why don't we go skiing together? I could use some exercise too." "Afterwards, we'll go to my house," said Groundhog. "I will fill 2 hot water bottles. My mother always used to say that heat was good for sore muscles." So there's our story for today, boys and girls. I hope you really liked it. You'll have to check out, will the groundhog see a shadow this year? Will it be in early spring? Time will tell. Stay tuned. See you next time.